Hello, and welcome to Association Transformation, where we discuss the impact and evolution of nonprofit organizations. We've been transatlantic to date, exploring association topics and challenges on both sides of the pond. But in today's episode, we go so global that we are reaching the other side of the world and are excited to welcome Toni Brearley, the Chief Executive Officer at the Australasian Society of Association Executives. We're going to take a deep dive into the issues surrounding associations in Australia and New Zealand and the creative and exciting solutions that they're implementing to overcome these issues. We talk experimental member content, hybrid events, shifts in business models, international collaboration, innovation, and much, much more. So, Toni and I are international transatlantic LinkedIn friends now that everything is remote and we get to connect with more people in all different parts of the world. We finally get together on this podcast. Andrew, I'm not sure. Do you know Toni? Toni Brearley is is all the way in Australia. It's the morning for her.
We're connected. We're absolutely connected. But I the first time I've had the pleasure of meeting you. Well, I would say face to face, but yeah, the first time I've had the opportunity to talk to you, at least. And actually, I'm going to go a step further than transatlantic. You're my trans-Pacific, trans-Tasman, trans-Indian Ocean connection, because we're global on this podcast. Well, we are now, at least. We've kind of in the first sort of half dozen or so episodes, we've really sort of looked at the world of associations. We've focused on the US and the UK for obvious reasons, but both Elisa and I work globally, so we thought it was about time that we welcomed you onto the pod, so we could just explore for our listeners what the sector is. Where the sector's at in Australasia. I presume you cover both Australia and New Zealand.
Hi guys, yes, we do. So we work across Australia and New Zealand, and providing services in both countries. Interestingly, they're very different countries at the moment, and just because of the way that the virus has played out, is that we're in very different states in both countries, which provides some interesting challenges as a single entity trying to roll out, I guess, a product that looks the same for all members. So yeah, it's been some fun times.
Yeah, fun times. My God, yeah. I'm going to use that as my ringtone. Toni saying, "Yeah, it's totally fun times." Yeah, I guess though, I'm sort of saying Australia, New Zealand, but the reality is, the size, the geography of Australia. For colleagues who are working in Queensland, Western Australia, Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, etc. I'm guessing that they're all experiencing our circumstances differently. So actually, I would think it's not just about the difference, is it, in terms of trans-Tasman differences? It's actually internally within Australia. You must be trying to handle members' needs and expectations. Must be quite a challenge for you and the team.
It is, Andrew. So if we look back to October last year, we're in a state where we have one of our states still in lockdown. We have one of our states, which is Western Australia, who have got complete hard border closures. We're negotiating, which means that we can't travel within our own country. So when you think about that practically, you think about associations that are national, can't, if they don't have people based in that state, they can't literally, get to their members face to face. So yes, we've done well, and yes, we've got very low cases, but some of the internal frameworks between the individual governments has made life a little bit tricky. So yes, you're absolutely right. It is difficult, and trying to provide the right messaging and the right information and the right support, to the right members at the right time has become, one of our greatest challenges.
Has that been the primary goal in these initial months, is to be that central repository for information to aggregate for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the interesting roles as a peak a peak organization is that every single one of our members is doing the same thing we are. So we don't want to duplicate the information that they already have. But what I've really found is that you have to put it in a framework to say, I know that you're looking after your podiatrists or your engineers or your sector, but I really need you to have a think about what you need for yourselves. And that was probably the way that I looked at framing information, and continue to do so. I think they get so bedded down, which is their role in supporting their members. We need to make sure that they remain strong and robust and informed. So there's, a broader association sector as we pop out the other end.
Yeah, and so what are the what I mean, you have the luxury of being able to, you have that bird's eye view, if you like, that broad appreciation of this of the sector, pan Australia, New Zealand. What are the themes that are coming through from your members? Because we certainly, from where we sit, we begin to, and we like you, Elisa, and I have the opportunity to see lots of different associations working, so we have an idea of it. But what I'm really curious to hear what the kind of main sort of themes, demands, and needs that you're seeing from your members.
Sure. Look, I think the elephant in the room is the events sector. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Mm-hmm.
is still something people have not negotiated. They still don't understand what to do.
Yeah.
And, as I think, when we kind of started to go into this in sort of March 2020, we didn't think that there would be any way that we'd be sitting in January, February 2021 still having some real uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
about what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in itself, it's a massive challenge. And it's not all about revenue. A lot of it is, but it's not all about revenue. Events have traditionally been the thing that we do for various different reasons. And yes, we've managed to, I think, do some of that virtually. And I heard something really interesting the other day is we are, whilst we have done some great connections and some great content, and I might get onto that later, education online, in some ways we were drawing down on the relationships that were already built. So, we did some great things around bringing CEOs from around the country onto Zoom meetings, virtual
Yeah.
coffee chats, things like that. But
Yeah.
a lot of those relationships were already established because people had met previously. When we're
Mm-hmm.
bringing in new people and trying to, I guess, onboard people virtually that are not known, I think that's the space we think we're now finding ourselves in, which is a little bit more difficult because there's actually no currency of relationship to draw down on. So
Yeah.
that I think is a challenge for a lot of our members. So that's a big challenge. And I guess, what goes on from that is actually, what do our membership models look like? We've had such a stable, I guess, and it wasn't always good. I'm not saying it was good, but we've all had this stable framework of what we thought membership looked like, what the benefits attached for that were, and how we went about things. It's been blown out of the water. And as I said, I don't think it's all bad, but it's definitely something people are struggling with, and want some certainty or some direction around that. And
Yeah.
part of the difficulty is that when you're trying to do something new, you often look to somebody else who's done it, but everyone's in the same boat. So it's kind of like who's gonna have the first crack at something and see what
Yeah.
it looks like.
You mentioned content and the virtualization of education and programming. Has this allowed you to experiment and take some chances on things, or are you really just trying to get out there quickly with examples and programming for the members?
Initially, it was all about speed. It was all about getting things out. as an organisation ourselves, we're now more in that experimental mode. I guess one of the things that having no events forced us to do was to reevaluate the whole framework of what we were doing. So my board very graciously allowed me to say, hey, I don't have a 2021 plan because, all of the above. How about we just, try some sort of, some quarter by quarter planning, try some different things and see where it is that the membership is engaged. But also I think it's the whole, it really is about having those conversations with the membership. They don't always know what they want, but sometimes they can tell you what they don't want, and you can, process of elimination. So yeah, I think both ways, Elisa. I think staying with, obviously some core work, but also trying to, play around the fringes of what are some new ways that we can work as well.
So, do we think that it's interesting when when you're talking? I mean, the whole events piece, for example, absolutely. That is clearly universal. And we've had a lot of chat on this pod and on other pods that we've been on. So that is always this theme. But surely, I mean, the purpose of a membership entity, of an association, that hasn't changed, has it? I mean, it's still, the delivery vehicles might be different, but the primary purpose of an association: training, development, networking, peer support, advocacy, representation, that's all still valid, isn't it? I mean, we're not seeing any kind of shift in terms of perceptions, or are you seeing a shift in what people perceive the value of their membership body to be?
I don't think there's been a shift. I think there's been a clarity. I think certainly, particularly early in 2020, when things really started to get bad, people really understood, I think, some people for the very first time, the value that associations bring to a sector. I think, so you take away the events and the education. I think the curation of information, the ability to harness a sector. We have what I have learned is that Australia has a very close relationship with government in a way that potentially some other countries don't. So, our associations were brought to the tables to not only inform policy, but in some ways to really assist government to keep industries working. So coming with solutions that governments were implementing. So a great example is the Dental Association, actually said to government, this is the way that our sector can operate safely. We're on board. We can get our members on board. Will you endorse this? And it was a yes, we can. Boarding schools did a really similar thing. So we were able to actually, and what I've realised in this wonderful global world that we have is that wasn't quite the case across a lot of other countries. So we are very, very fortunate that we had that really close alignment and close interaction with government in some areas. And that's where I believe that members of associations have really seen their value outside of the tangible, the transactional goods and services.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, again, that's something we want to explore further, don't we, Elisa? Because, you in the States, you guys, you got it.
States. Yeah, we're still banging on the door.
Yeah, but your associations understand the value that they have in, representing their industries or their professions, don't they? Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking of the Association of Associations. That as that unified voice of an industry, there wasn't the immediate attention. And Toni, maybe that wasn't the case for you. It was the members who had this voice in their industries. Were you looked to by government to give guidance on the impact of the association and the nonprofit industry?
Not so much, Elisa, to be honest, because they were very, very focused on industry specific. It was all about, let's face it was public health and safety, really first and foremost. So how do we negotiate shutting down essentially entire sectors And some sectors still are not back, hospitality and restaurants and things like that. But also, how do we open them up again? So we certainly participated in conversations. We certainly advocated in spaces that were sector-wide, so around some of the government assistance and subsidies, ensuring that not-for-profits, quite similar to actually the States. Again, we were in a more fortunate position that our government did actually provide, very similar subsidies to not-for-profits as they did to for-profit businesses, which was great. But yeah, but part of our role was more so, and again, that's the role we took on for our members, so they didn't have to worry about it and they could get on with the business of supporting their sectors.
Yeah.
Have there been other silver linings? I mean, through all this crisis and all this disruption, nothing you could have expected or planned for, but has anything else, I don't know, shown itself to be something that you will want to keep, something you'll want to grow, a silver lining through all this?
I think there's been loads of silver linings. Once we got out of crisis mode and knew that we were going to be okay, because I think that was really, phase one. Are we going to be okay? And I went through that too. I remember the really specific morning we were, in a hotel in Hobart. So that's in Tasmania. That's the little bit down the bottom. Doing some site inspections for a conference in the future. And the world was literally like collapsing. And I was standing there going, are we going to be okay? But once we got through that, and once we worked out that we were, I think things like what we're doing today, for me, I have never felt more connected to the global community than I have in the past 12 months, which has been amazing. And I know that other associations have said that too, which, I think that's one general silver lining. I think people have been more open to collaboration as well. Whereas previously people have been a little bit closed off, or what do I need that for? That's just an added sort of thing. People are really open to collaborating in, what did I hear someone say? Unusual alliances. And I think that that's a great way to think about things. There have been industries and sectors and people that have got together that may never have done that had there not been the I wouldn't say goodwill, maybe the forced will to do so, and then realize the world didn't explode and we can do this. So I think there's some of the great things that we have learned to do.
Yeah, I mean, I love I absolutely, obviously, Elisa and I are big advocates of that international collaboration for obvious reasons. But that connectivity piece just blows my mind. It blows my mind that a lot of people have only just discovered it in 2020. It makes me think, well, hang on a minute. Zoom wasn't invented on March the 15th or whatever it was. We had opportunities to connect, but yeah, I just think, personally, I'd see no way back. I think now that we've started reaching out to our peers and our contemporaries across the globe, it feels to me that, well, it would be utterly a remiss and a backward step if we stopped looking to learn from each other and to share with each other. I mean, do you see? I mean, obviously you do, but do you think, from an Australian perspective and from a Kiwi perspective, from a New Zealand perspective, do you see those opportunities sort of growing for your members, or do you get a sense that perhaps they're just not there yet, but they will be eventually in terms of embracing the international piece?
I don't think that's a one size fits all answer. I think that I think, like with everything, those people that had started to think about things prior to COVID have moved along with doing that. Those people that had to start at the beginning are still not quite there. So I believe there's people that have embraced this and are running with it. But we also heard stories of associations that took their events people 3 weeks to get a Zoom account approved. the rest of the world's moving on, and there was so it's not all it's not all
Yeah.
great. Not all the stories are great, and that breaking down, I think, some of those processes. I think that's probably one of the other things that we've learned to do a little bit better is start to break down those barriers and make decisions quicker than what boards in the past have liked. But again, it became necessary, not optional, really.
Right. I mean, the hand of innovation has been forced, and I think organizations they've been forced to fast track, and boards have been uncomfortable and disrupted, and they may have been required to look at things in a different way. Have you guys adopted anything, whether it be an investment in technology or a decision about a membership category? Is there anything big that you guys did because of this that may be a long-term pivot for you?
Look, I don't think that they're big things. And Andrew, as you were saying, it's kind of things that we should have done anyway. And why the hell didn't we? It's crazy. But, we introduced a digital subscription to, a low-cost entry point subscription for people to access our digital content. We probably should have done that 5 years ago. And then again, we were lucky. We were running webinars. We were already on that track. So all we did was kind of, super increase what we were doing. So we were okay in that way. I think now it's the experimentation with the different style of digital engagement, whatever that looks like. So and I think also, and I actually again think that this is something that we should have been doing, really breaking down the outcomes of each program, product, and service. So what are the outcomes? Is this a networking event? Is this education? Is this or is it something else? And therefore really kind of digging down into how the delivery method supports the outcome, rather than us just not really thinking about it and bowling through anyway. And I think for me, that's the biggest change in our own organisation. And I know with conversations with others, I think that's really the thought process now, because I think the way that we approach those bits into the future are going to change forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had conversations around this as well. That the digital production and the production value that you have to consider, and then, as you rightly say, link to outcome and the value proposition. Being able to articulate that, I think, it's music. Quite frankly, it's music to my ears. It's I love to hear it, but because the reality is, the membership sector, the association sector is as critical, if not more so, as we come toward the end of 2020 than it was at the start of 2020. And we mustn't lose sight that just because we're perhaps not able to physically meet and connect, that doesn't mean that our networks and our membership bodies are of any less value to us. The complete opposite. But I think you're spot on. I mean, I'm zoomed to death. I need something else. I need a new digital sort of outlet to re-engage with my membership bodies. I think that's fascinating, and I'll be interested to hear as sort of the months go on. And I think these days, like you say, it is months, not years. It's as the months go on, understanding what you roll out. I'll be fascinated to hear how that materializes.
Well, and I've always, I don't know, somewhat, I've been worried about associations of associations, because you're held to such a high standard, almost such a ridiculous standard, because the members are you. And I wonder if that bar is even higher. And as you've experimented and survived and pivoted, you mentioned that you've been asking the members what they need. How are you going about that surveying in a way that gives you information, real-time information to let you make these decisions?
To answer your first question, it's terrifying. It is terrifying to be the people that people are looking at.
No one envies association of association.
Our first, I guess, digital conference, live event, took so much time, energy, and angst to put together. And again, Andrew, really conscious of all the things we've learned, and then, putting them into, I guess, as you say, a little bit of a higher benchmark for people. But I think digital production quality is something that's not going away either. I think people are way less inclined to forgive, bad quality, bad sound, but we really need to catch people's attention, and that attention is waning again. So that's something people need to be conscious of. Sorry, Elisa, what was the second part of that question?
No, you had mentioned earlier about you were asking your members what they needed, and sometimes they didn't know what they needed. And I wondered, with such a large membership and so diverse geographically and in so many ways, how you were hearing from them and turning that opinion into action.
Yeah, so we did, I guess, a traditional survey. We actually did one in April. And followed up again in October. So I guess in October we used the results from April and put those into place. But to be honest, it's also embedding some of the really key questions, like what is your biggest challenge now, full stop, into conversations and interactions every time you interact with a member. So it's something, as I guess a staff group, that we've decided that we would do. To try and not weirdly slip into the conversation. If somebody rings and they wants to pay for something, try and keep that conversation going a little bit longer and go, well, what are you guys struggling with the most now? Or what do you wish that we were doing that we're not doing? And as you say, sometimes you get that, oh, you guys are doing great. And it's like, yeah, that's not helpful. But I think you have to be really deliberate about trying to extract that information as well.
And what are people? Oh, sorry, Lise. No, go on. Sorry, Lise. Go on. Go for it.
No, I love the inquiry as part of the culture, where and whomever they speak to on the phone is going to have that, not only that concern, but that interest in what their pain points are. The challenge then becomes capturing that information in a usable way, with a broad staff across all different types of member transactions. But I think you at least win credit and points for asking the question and letting the members feel heard.
And what are people saying? What are people saying? What are the pain points? What are people wanting from their network?
Well, if I had a crystal ball and could tell you what the economy was going to be like at the December 2021, I would be able to retire very, very nicely. Look, I hate to say it, but it is around the event stuff. What are people thinking, feeling? I think a lot of it, but look, it can be really specific. How do we manage staff remotely? Someone said, "Oh, I'd really love you guys to do a webinar about onboarding staff remotely." But I think the broader conversation is, how do you build a hybrid workforce? Is really, those sorts of things. People are thinking about how to reuse their buildings, so I think there's the themes of workforce, products and services, governance, those sorts of things. But yeah, just distilling that down into individual needs can be, as you say, a little bit tricky.
And it is still so tactical. There's some of this that still is survival. It is still figuring this out on a day-to-day basis, because we haven't done this before. It is new, and it does change, every day, every week. Are you finding that your members are, in the terms of their industry and their communities, they were looked to by the government for answers, and are they all raising the bar with their memberships? I mean, if this is really about increasing value and relevance, are you seeing that across the board, even in non-essential industries?
I would definitely say yes. What I really hope, though, is people are capturing some data to be able to understand what that means. So a lot of what I've heard is, we've never been so busy, our members have never been so engaged. What I would love to know is, what does that mean? In a real
Busy does not mean impactful.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I think they're some of the things that we were talking earlier about trying to, I guess, raise our membership to look after themselves. They're some of the things that, I guess we're trying to do is to say, well, what does that mean? And what will that mean for the future? Because as you say, it is quite tactical right now. So how do you turn that engagement in a tactical way into more long-term engagement and and growth, I guess?
And innovation. And innovation. That's what I am desperate to see from our global sector is innovation. Because the opportunity is embarrassing, which is a good thing. But yeah, I feel that certainly at chief exec, C-suite level, and board level, we don't need to be talking about tactics anymore. We don't need to be talking about operational realities unless you're an extremely small entity with a management board, as opposed to a governing body with a exec function. I'm desperate to see more innovation and for people to understand what that could look like. And yeah, digital is a core part of that, but it's no longer, as you said, people are unforgiving. It's not shoehorning our physical events onto a digital platform and calling it a virtual experience, and what examples, I'm keen to understand what examples are. I mean, I know there will be examples of innovation in the Aussie sector, but what have you seen? Without naming names, don't embarrass anybody, if you don't want to. But what real innovation have we seen so far?
It's a really
Way to
interesting question.
Silence is golden. My God.
right on the spot, Andrew. She's never going to come back now.
I've seen people give things a red hot crack, and that's what I think has been great. So one of our associations did do, it wasn't just a virtual conference, it was live broadcast. It was literally a television program,
Right.
and it was fantastic. They opened it up, and they've opened it up. So it wasn't just for their members. They actually took the approach of, I'll tell you who it is, they won't mind, it was amazing, the Australian Trucking Association, which has been
Right.
an essential service, and
Yeah.
I guess, one of those industries that we have all never thought about, but realised how important they were through this crisis. So what they did is they took that opportunity to say, okay, well, yes, we've got members and we've got sponsors, which is our livelihood, and we've got to roll all this together. But why don't we also use this as an opportunity to go to the broader public to educate them about safety, trucking safety, and some of the key issues for that community, like interfacing with the public. And I think that is one of the keys to associations moving forward. The helping members attract and retain their customers is going to be key in, I think, association survival. It's no longer insular, it needs to be external.
Yeah. I like that.
No,
It's about impact.
Yeah.
It's about
it is about impact and
Yeah,
recovery through
Yeah, the
that.
Australian Podiatry Association have just launched a consumer-facing website. So it's a completely separate web. It's not the association's website. It's a completely rebranded consumer website where anyone that wants to find a foot doctor can actually go. But it's around, again, foot health and those sorts of things. But you don't go to the association's website to find that, because, as you know, when you try and dig down into an association's website to find anything, most of us are pretty bad at it, let's face it, because we're trying to put so much information in there. So they've completely carved that off, looked at a consumer website, and gone again down that path of, how do I help my members' customers? How do I make sure that my members are bringing customers, clients, whatever we want to call them, in the door? I think that is a space that there's so much potential for associations to step into, if they're brave enough.
Absolutely. I love it. Mhm.
Well, there'll be many more case studies. I think once we hear things shake out and people are through the worst of it and can look out to the other side and see through the crisis to that future, we'll hear more of these stories. And I know there'll be a lot more amongst your membership as well. Toni, we have been so privileged to have you with us, and thank you so much for joining us at these odd hours across all time zones. We are just thankful for your time and really excited to see not only your leadership, but the innovations of your membership in the association space and in their own industries. We hope that we can chat with you again in a few months and hear what else has come forth and what else you guys have been able to accomplish. But thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your leadership.
My pleasure. It's been great. And I'll go and searching Andrew, for those innovation examples now, Andrew.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I like it, Toni. Next year, we're on another podcast in the new year, and you're just going to list them all for us, okay?
Challenge accepted.
There'll be more than you can imagine.
Exactly.
But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Wherever you find your podcasts, you can find Association Transformation. And if you have a topic or would like to join us on the podcast, you can email hello@yourconsort.com, and we'll draw upon your ideas and our networks to bring you the best conversations about everything that is advancing and challenging the nonprofit industry. We want to thank the Institute of Association Leadership, Consort Strategies, and Brewer Pratt Solutions. Until next time, stay well and put your members and your mission first.
Association Transformation is brought to you in partnership between Consort Strategy and Brewer Pratt Solutions in support of the Institute of Association Leadership.